Hi, I'm Avi Freedman, one of the founders and CEO of Kentik. I'm going to talk a little bit for the next couple hours about what we're doing and why. Looking forward to getting some questions. We have some questions for you guys about what you see out there in the industry and what people are looking for. To break it up, I'm going to give an intro. I'm going to then do a quick product intro. My co-founder, Ian Pai, is going to talk about the data backend, specifically the component of it that takes all the different data sources and fuses it. We see a lot of interest in enterprise in big data-based network telemetry analytics, and there's a lot of patterns about the kinds of things we're doing to massage data that might be interesting to that community. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the specific use cases around peering analytics and network planning, DDoS attack detection, which is a lot of our customers use, and a little bit of our performance and security roadmap, and again, hopefully get into a conversation. Kentik is a startup. When we talk to small companies, we say we're a 2.5-year-old startup, and when we talk to big companies, we say a 3-year-old startup. We started to address specifically the network operations use cases of network analytics. Our community, a lot of us are from the web company service provider space. As we were talking about modems just before, I ran an ISP in the 90s and have many friends that are still, Jim in the corner there, ran an ISP. My CTO sold me my first T1, so we go back to that day. And just heard a lot of need out there for a more modern take on analytics, but actually came at it from initially a security use case, knew there were some performance use cases, and so really tried to take the view of what would a modern platform look like that we can go deep in one thing and then extend to other areas. We primarily deliver what we do as SaaS. We take flow into our cloud, which I'll describe briefly. It's computers and networking and storage, as all clouds are. And we also do on-premise for people that are religious about it. We don't really care either way. It just has to be big data, so it's not going to be one VM taking all this data and storing the details. Primarily, we start from the view of the traffic. You know, there was a Twitter discussion yesterday, which is primary, the policy or the traffic? I don't think you can really say either, and eventually I think you'll need to have a view of both. But we take a view of what is actually happening is what you need to start paying attention to, and then later say, is that what I'm expecting? Is that what is supporting what's going on? But we also take routing data, primarily at the outside. We take SNMP to do correlation, and then some other kinds of data that I'll talk about. We're a venture-backed company, decided to try to do that instead of bootstrap. And as I mentioned, we're from the industry. So the problem as we see it is the network is growing in importance. Sneakernet's not a good option anymore. And a lot of people are trying to do very data-driven operations, both on the DevOps side, and as we did on the Datanauts podcast, talked about a little bit about how network people were doing some of DevOps even before DevOps realized it was interesting to inventory things. Yet, the state of the art is actually pretty grim for sysadmins trying to come in and figure out what's going on. Forget underlay and overlay, just what's going on, you know, what are the issues, why is there congestion, double click on SNMP. And a lot of businesses, because we deal about half with enterprise, and our primary customers today are digital enterprise, web companies, SaaS companies, and about half with service providers. And a lot of them are trying to do customer success and things for which they really think this network data is important. And again, the appliance-based solutions aren't what they're interested in. The other thing is, we've been trying to make it so that network nerds need to get bugged less by people that need to know what's going on with the infrastructure. And we've been encouraged that a lot of the companies we work with, and this might be influenced by working with, again, the people that style themselves digital enterprise, is that the network folks that we work with actually really want this data to be available to the application folks. And the application folks are happy to go look at the specific problem if it isn't a network problem. But the status quo of, oh, there's a problem, let me look at it, the problem's gone, that just wastes everyone's time. And the tools out there weren't there, and the theme we hear again and again is sort of down with appliances. Whether it's a security appliance or a network performance appliance or a NetFlow appliance, people want to be able to build on top and integrate with and around. And the specific market issue that we saw is that there weren't really good options for people that just wanted to turn something on and be able to see what was going on. So the open source community is probably about 8 years behind on flow analytics in terms of at-scale networks. NFDump, PM account, Silk, very popular tools, they run on one computer. So it becomes difficult for people that want to keep the detailed records and not just have aggregates. There's appliances, for people that were at Interop and roamed the floor, there's still some legacy RAR dinosaur appliances there that you can buy. A lot of people have done, try and work with big data-based approaches, and specifically to take lots of different kinds of corporate data, but even specifically network. And a lot of these things don't have primitives for even things like Elasticsearch is just adding IPv6 as a primitive. So like a database that knows how to aggregate in terms of prefixes and let you roll up by /16s. These are the things which you then have to go and explain, and you've got your dev, your big data group, your network group. What we try to do is work side by side with those people and just take the annoying network person features off there. And then there's a lot of more software solutions, some of which work great for things like SNMP, but again, in the flow level, don't scale for the kinds of customers we're typically talking to. So what we wanted to do, what the people we talked to thought should exist, is a platform that could take not only flow, and you all got t-shirts that say NetFlow on them. So NetFlow is this bad term. Cisco's come out with tetration. They say NetFlow is dead. On the other hand, IPFix, NetFlow is really a generic structure, and there's people like Cisco AVC and Citrix AppFlow and people that, and we use nprobe, that can take detailed application and network timing data and stick it in a flow record. So what's the truth there is there's data that you can get from the infrastructure that's traffic based. There's other data you need to put together, and if you can do that, it solves the network ops use case, but also does some things that security and performance folks are interested in. It is never going to be APM, but it gets at APM, and analysts look at that as a space. We really say, is it the network or the application is the key thing that you need sometimes packets to go look at. Our view is we call it all flow. We don't get religious. People say we hate NetFlow. We say awesome, send it to us in some other form. It's all packets and bytes that went to IP addresses that have some other metadata attached. And a key difference between the major vendor that's in use in service providers, Arbor, is that instead of one hard disk for 5 years of data, which forces aggregation, we just keep it all and try to make the queries on top be very fast. And that just allows people not to have to know in advance what they want to look at, because the network is this chaotic place and your policies change and you don't always know in advance what the issues are going to be. We talked a little bit about this in terms of the big data primitives, but what network people want to do with infrastructure, with software, is sometimes different. You might care about a routing view, whereas the application owner doesn't. And because it requires a lot of gear on the back end to store the data, we default to SaaS for folks. And so again, we try to have an expansive view of what we think flow is. So the view is take data from different places. Already we take it from routers and switches. A sensor would just be seeing PCAP. I'll talk about that a little later. We have a broad view. We just haven't done integrations with everybody. But we specifically work with NTOP, if you guys are familiar. With nprobe, we've licensed that, which does all sorts of decodes. So we take that can run on a server, a hypervisor, or on a sensor. We also take BGP and SNMP data and then run on a cluster. And then the goal is that multiple different groups can use it. So how many people have heard of a finance group directly using a flow tool before? Right? But maybe someone wants to know, how much does that customer cost me? Some of the customers we have want to know on international links or transit link, how much does it cost? Or they have their wholesale providers. They have a customer that says, I want 60 cents per megabit per second. Well, is that what's the average packet mile distance? Are they using peering or transit? So you can take BGP communities, which already for many providers have geography, and do aggregations and answer questions like that. We're not yet at the point of the excuse my BlackBerry, the hello computer, tell me how much Joe costs. But to be able to give reports by customer, to be able to do that, that's something we want to do. Security often does, planning often does, sales. So if you're a hosting provider, I just detected someone all of a sudden sending a whole bunch of data from our storage infrastructure to Amazon S3. Maybe that means I should go talk to them. So again, it's a work in progress to make the system that useful directly, but there's APIs, there's reports that we can generate. And so that's the view, is that instead of being one system for every group, you should be able to work that way. And there are some folks that have come in and they do deep professional services. Our view is today we're only dealing with people that if they want deep custom features, they use our API. So we're not doing SAP consulting. There's companies like Guavas that will come in and do that kind of integration. But we're young and that's not quite the approach we're taking. So if I'm unclear, are there any questions, feel free to stop. So how we do it, we're a bit iconoclastic, and so are our customers. Of 60-some customers, maybe 2 or 3 are only in public cloud. And maybe 25 started only in public cloud. And why is that? Why do they run infrastructure? Isn't running infrastructure hard? Isn't that going the way of the dodo? Well, if you have a lot of revenue, then you need to look at, and again, per the broad Twitter discussion, things that the current infrastructure maybe doesn't support. Getting around that it'd be nice if BGP just worked and everyone peered with each other and the world was beautiful, which that hasn't been the case for 30 years. It's unlikely to be the case in the next 30. So for performance, we take flow from 100 different ASs, and in any given public cloud that we've tried, the performance is not going to be there. And for reliability, and even for cost for deep storage, that we run our own infrastructure. We go to Equinix, we peer with our customers, we put servers online, buy bandwidth, pixie boot them, and all that. And a lot of our customers run hybrid, and so if there's an issue with the cloud, they migrate off. Today, we're not focusing as much as people who are only cloud, because if there's an issue, they can go to the cloud provider and say, I can prove there's an issue in the network layer, and they say, fine, kill the instance and make another. It's just a very different attitude to infrastructure you control. And we have our own backend that we wrote that does things like prefix, by prefix querying, putting geo on, and some other things. Ian will talk a little bit about that, both because we like it and because the sort of ingest layer we'll talk about is common to any kind of thing you want to do with your own big database approach to the network. And we take data from our customers, either unencrypted, or we have a proxy that they can send it to, and it'll encrypt it, send it over HTTPS. For the protocol nerds, it's Cap and Proto is the underlying format, which is protobuf. Well, I guess now there is a protobuf v2, but it's an alternate to protobuf. About half our customers send data over the net, and for IPFix and flow, that's just IP addresses. For SFlow, you have to be careful because it's the first bytes of packets. So I talked about a little bit that network data can actually be useful to multiple people in an enterprise. So we like to think of it as data-driven network operations. Like you have this data-driven mentality, but what that turns into in a lot of places is everything goes into Kafka and gets written to cyclic buffers, basically stored in Hadoop forever. But how do you actually make it useful to people? Well, the NOC, I think everyone understands. The SOC, today most of our customers send us sampled flow, but there's no reason we can't take unsampled flow. And some of the people we do on-prem with are more interested in that. Threat feeds. Today, Jim coded up something that uses our API and takes the emerging threats rule set, which is relatively few IPs. We're going to make it so people can load in threat feeds and analytics. We're not going to be a security company. I'm not going to go and say, Mr. CISO, I will stop all badness on your network. But the network is an indicator, shows you what's going on, at least at a high level, and everyone that we know that looks finds things that belt and suspenders wise the other things don't work. And it's not service preferences, it's actually service performance, excuse me. So on service performance side, that's a big one, which what surprised us is, if you're familiar with, what was it, Nixon, NetVCR, there's now Extra Hop, there's a lot of these solutions that do wire data up to trying to look at applications. A lot of our customers don't even know that that kind of thing exists, because appliances are not something they want to do. Like, they just don't even think about it. It's not something that nanog that you go and learn. You don't, so the idea that there are sources that you can take that look like flow that actually can give you performance information and help you understand the performance users are getting and have it all be in one place is very interesting. I don't think anyone's gotten there yet, but the holy grail, I think, would be packets up and applications down. And I think, to me, this is sort of like the ISP days. It's very exciting to see, because the state of the art is so crappy in so many different areas that there's so much to do, from the automation over to the monitoring and then the back. I talked about planning and finance, really tools. Almost all of our top 20 customers have done some kind of integration. Most common is Grafana. Has anyone used Grafana? We've actually done a, sorry. So we actually have an integration which is a native data connector now, so which I don't think existed last Tech Field Day, so which I'll show you. So you can actually pull directly. But again, people need the entire view. I don't want to pretend that servers don't exist, right? Some things say, well, the problem's only in the network, it's only in the application, it's only in the servers. But in reality, you need to bring these things together. And as a small startup, we can't do everything. So it's how do you integrate to be able to put all the things in one place so someone can figure out what's going on. And again, sales, if you're a service provider, a lot of people look at the evil side, right? The presentation you guys saw earlier today, one of the primitives of that and CDN is people don't always they optimize for their own business, not for the greater performance of the internet. And one of the things that people do is they congest on purpose to get people to be a customer. And they optimize their infrastructure cost and say, well, I'm peering with you, that doesn't give me money. Let me look at who's behind there and go get them as a customer. So to me, to a lot of our web company customers, that's performance, control. I want to connect to that person. And actually, Salesforce does peer with people, by the way. It's very common. Most of the web companies actually do peer with a lot of their large customers. They just don't peer with SMB. You have to be in the ecosystem to do that kind of peering. But a lot of internet providers say maybe they should be my customer, because that's the view, is pretty much that everyone should be their customer. And if you're from Australia, you know Telstra has been like been like that. A lot of the PTTs in Europe and Asia have been pretty bad that way. So as I mentioned, the kind of folks we work with are web companies, SaaS companies, service providers, some of whom do self-service. They put what we're doing in the portal. And I will speed up. We have some numbers, and I will skip over that. So close this section of it. I will say, if anyone watching would like a cool NetFlow t-shirt to rock out to, go to this URL.